Welcome to a new edition of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. Rob Reigns, Mike Reigns here, STLSportspage.com, as the Cardinals get ready to open a new homestand against the Phillies on Friday night. Mike, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Let's hope this stretch of games is a little bit better than the last one we just saw.
Yeah, Cardinals had a day off on Thursday, well needed after that 1-5 road trip. And actually, the Cardinals should have an advantage on Friday night because it's going to be the Phillies that are a little bit tired. If you missed their game on Thursday night in Atlanta, they had a rain delay in that ball. I'm not sure why they were playing a night game to start with, but they were traveling to St. Louis. But they played a night game in Atlanta. It had a rain delay, got done about 5 minutes to 1 in the morning, and then, of course, had to pack up and fly to St. Louis. So might be a tired bunch of Phillies at Busch Stadium on Friday night.
Let's hope we can take advantage of that, right? Any advantage we can get, let's take it.
1-5 on the road trip. What were your thoughts and observations about the 6 games in Boston and Pittsburgh?
The positive sign of it is this team's scoring a lot of runs. Offensively, they look great. They're a fun team to watch. Anybody that's watched this podcast knows that we've said this is going to be a fun team to watch. And, you get down in games and you don't ever feel like you're out, right? You get down 5-0, you come back tied at 5. Next thing you know, you're down 13-5 or whatever it is, and you get it back to 9, and you got the tying run there. So I think that's the positive side is the offense, and the negative side is you're giving up more runs than you're scoring.
Yeah, I was going to say if your team ERA is almost 6, that means you've got to score a lot of runs to win ball games. So that's the give and the get, I guess. At this point, is the offense is doing well. The one time that they struggled in the Wednesday day game in Pittsburgh, of course, they finally got a good game from Eric Fetty, but they basically wasted it because the offense had an off day.
You look at those 3 games in Boston and the first game in Pittsburgh, you score 4 runs, 7 runs, 9 runs, and 4 runs, and you don't win any of those games. Now, okay, if you told me you lost the 2 games you scored 4, okay, but if you're scoring 7 and 9, you have to win those games.
I think the average generally in the major leagues is if you score 4 or more runs, win the majority of the games. I know you're going to have some that you don't win, but that's usually the number that I think every team tries to shoot for as far as from an offensive standpoint is to score 4 runs a night. And of course, the other problem for the Cardinals at this point in the season, when you look at it, they've lost 7 games, 4 of them in extra innings. They're now 0-4 in extra innings, which is a tough way to start the season too.
And one of the strengths that you and I talked about coming into this season, we thought was going to be the bullpen, and it's really not been one of the strengths so far. Outside of, I feel very confident in saying Ryan Helsley will not have another game this season where he walks 4 batters. He's too good for that. Everybody's going to have one where they blow up. So I'm going to excuse him for that. Phil Maton's been a very high bright spot in this bullpen, but everybody else has really been on a rocky start.
I would say that the other guy who's I think really probably maybe outperformed what your expectations were was Kyle Leahy. I mean, I think he started in with a very kind of long reliever kind of mop up guy role, but he's moved himself into what they call the circle of trust for the leading relievers. And right now, the way he's pitching, I'd rather have him on the mound than some of the other guys that they have out there in that bullpen.
I'd probably pitch him before JoJo. He looks like Leahy at least looks like he's got a little bit more control, a little more bite on his fastball right now. And he's getting more swing and miss stuff, which is key when you're giving up so many hits and getting so many guys on base.
I think, I don't have the number in front of me, but I think it's almost 40% strikeout rate for Leahy, and that's an amazing accomplishment for a team that doesn't get a lot of swing and misses. And that's I think part of the problem with that bullpen. I think the other part of the problem with the bullpen, and it dovetails into the starting pitching, which I know we're going to talk about, is I don't think the starting pitching is carrying you deep enough into ball games, that you're over relying on that bullpen to get too many outs every night. You're in that bullpen almost by the 6th inning. It seems like almost every night. The only pitcher who's gotten an out in the 7th inning in the first 12 games is Matthew Liberatore. He's got 1 out in the 7th inning. So I think that's a problem for all these starting pitchers, is that they've got to find a way to get deeper into the ball game.
And I think there's 2 ways to look at this, right? Because one, I'm going to put Sonny Gray in a different category because he's been pulled 3 times with 75 pitches or less, right around there. So could he give you more than that? Absolutely. I think Ollie's just pulling him because he's afraid of injury later and he wants him to be fresh, which I don't know that I really agree with because that's the whole point of a starting pitcher. So I'm going to kind of put Sonny in a different category because I think he could go that far. Everybody else has needed to come out because of the way the game's gone, right? And you can't, sugarcoat it any way around it. Miles Mikolas has not had a good start to this season.
No, and I think people will say, oh, it's only been a couple of games, but I think you look back to last year, I mean, the sample size is a lot bigger than a couple of games. I mean, basically, he's been almost, if not statistically, the worst pitcher in the National League over the last season and a half. So a very
if a
I don't have any indication that they're going to make a roster move or anything. If he doesn't pitch well, but he really needs to pitch well in that game.
if a starter can't get past 3 innings, what I mean, then you're really, really struggling, right? You're really having some problems. So, I don't know how many more starts you can realistically give him if it continues to go like this.
I mean, one of the old adages in baseball is that you can't win a pennant in April, but you can lose one. And I'm not saying that the Cardinals were a team that was going to be contending for the division title, but in April, you want to think they're at least going to be competitive. And we already talked about the way the offense has come out. I think they are a much more competitive team than they were last year or in 2023 too, for that matter. So I think that that's something they need to try to get figured out. And yeah, you're going to have to pay Michaelis either way. I mean, he's under contract. He's got no trade clause, so you're not going to be able to trade him, but you don't have to pitch him. And I think you look at a situation where, Michael McGreevy, for example, he pitched again in Memphis on Thursday night, which 5 innings, gives up 2 runs. So I think he's a guy that's everybody expected, could be in this big league rotation based on how he pitched at the end of last season, based on how he pitched in spring training. But there wasn't a spot for him because of the way they kept all the older pitchers. So I don't know how long you wait until you make that move.
And the frustrating part is almost all of these games they've been in, they've been competitive and they've had a shot to win. They're just the pitching is not holding up to give them that opportunity. And now the only hope that we can as we move forward is that can the offense continue to drive this and hopefully the pitching gets better.
Well, the other thing to watch for as far as the starting pitching is concerned is this is the week, April 16th is the date that the Cardinals had targeted before the season started to go to a 6-man rotation, moving Steven Matz back from the bullpen where he's been okay, but he really hasn't had much of an opportunity to pitch, and then put him back in the rotation. So that's even another reason why you should be able to go deeper with your starting pitchers because they're going to get that extra day of rest.
Yeah, that I just don't understand. And Ali has always kind of been that way because whether it's the analytics or whatever numbers tell him that third time through the rotation or through the batting order is really when he likes to pull his pitchers. And so typically that ends up being the 6th inning for most starters, right? And that's usually when he comes out. So, if a starter is able to get to a guy in the 7th inning that's just now the third time through, then does he give him a chance? I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But, there's no reason that a starting pitcher right now can't throw 85 or 90 pitches. So when you're pulling Sonny at 75, I understand the thought of having a reliever pitch a clean inning, but why can't Sonny start that 7th inning and then 10 pitches later come out?
I always thought that the magic number for a starting pitcher was 100 pitches, that you should be
Well, it
able to
should be,
go
but it
to
keeps
100.
going down and down.
Yeah. The Cardinals did make a move, a roster move on Thursday during the off day as far regarding the bullpen. And in case you missed it, they optioned Chris Roycroft to Memphis. He's had a couple of really, really rough. Walked the first 2 guys in the 13th inning in that game on Wednesday in Pittsburgh, led to that 2-1 loss. Their corresponding roster move has not been confirmed by the team, but we expect it to be Roddery Munoz, who was one of the new pitchers in spring training, has some big league experience with Miami last year, but a big power arm, gets a lot of strikeouts. So we'll see how he fits into that mix. And we've talked before of the season, and the Cardinals have talked about it as well. They expect that bullpen to kind of be a constant revolution. The old term, the nickname I-55 shuttle, I think is going to come into play, and this is just the first move for that.
Yeah, and hopefully Roycroft can figure out, because he's been a good pitcher and he's been a good addition in that bullpen, but so far this year he's really struggled with control and command, and so hopefully he can get down there and get right and find that because we're going to need him back at some point.
You're going to go through a lot of pitchers, both in the starting rotation and the bullpen. That's every club does, not just the Cardinals. So, hopefully Munoz comes up here and gives them a boost in that bullpen and provides some relief. Okay, now we got to flip over. Mike Raines and Rob Raines talking here on STLSportsPage.com. Raines on the Cardinals podcast, brought to you by our friends at the Drury Hotels, Archwell Health, all of our other sponsors here on the website, keeping all of our content free without any paywalls to you. The position player side of things, you've got some guys who are playing very well off to very good starts, and you've got a very key component, mostly in the second hole in the batting order, who has had a horrible start.
Yeah, and the first comment I just want to say about the offense in general is they're tied for third in all of MLB in runs scored. But you look at a record of 5-7 because of the pitching that we just talked about. So, but offensively, there's a lot of bright spots to look at. But it's been a rough start for Wilson Contreras, absolutely. And he's going to get it back. It's just a matter of when and how quick. And if it was me, with the way this team's playing, you got to ride the hot hand. And I think it's okay if you drop him in the lineup. Ollie seems a little bit worried about that, but you got to get him out of the two hole right now.
He's 5 for 49 to start this season, almost a 45%, I think, at his strikeout rate. You just have zero confidence that he's going to come through when he gets up in this situation. He got a hit on Wednesday. One of those hits he got on Wednesday was the ball went about 2 feet in front of the plate, dropped when the catcher and the Pirates first baseman collided, and then leading to that weird play out of the plate when Thomas J.C. tried to score and tried to dance around them a little bit and got tagged out. Some people were arguing about obstruction and the thought the possibility might have been obstruction. Might have a better case for that if Sajasi had actually plowed through them and so they were blocking the path to the home plate. But since he got around them, and you have to also allow a fielder a chance to catch the ball, even if it's in the baseline. So I think that's why the umpire said there was not any obstruction on the play. But so that's one of the 5 hits that he's got. So yeah, and I understand the point about what they're trying to do with the lineup construction is go left, right, left. So you don't set up a situation in the late innings where a handed reliever or right-handed reliever come in there and face their 3 batters and all, be the same batting from the same side of the plate. But still, like you said, I mean, I think, you've got other guys that you could put up into that spot. The way Jordan Walker's off to a start, I think you could do that. I think you can move Victor Scott up into the leadoff spot to kind of change the top couple of spots. So there's some other ways to go about it.
The thing I was going to say too is I think you're putting too much pressure on Wilson by leaving him in that spot because he feels like he has to come through every time. Whereas if you drop him to 6 or 7 in the lineup, does it take a little pressure off and just allow him to relax and get a swing back? And you just said what I was going to say is if you want to keep the lefty-righty matchup, Jordan Walker is the perfect guy to put there right now. He's hitting the ball very hard, very well. The biggest takeaway that I have for Jordan Walker this year is you can tell he's seeing the ball a lot better because of his pitch selection and his swing selection. He's not chasing that low and outside pitch like he was all of last year. And, there's countless times where you can say that would have been a strikeout last year and it's not this year. And that's what you're looking for in the growth of Jordan Walker.
He just looks a lot calmer at the plate, and I think he also is because of the fact that he's playing better offensively. He's looked much better in the outfield as well. He made the catch he made to end the game. I think it was on Tuesday night, the final play of the game. He doesn't make that catch a year ago, and the Cardinals might lose that game. So, yeah, exactly. I think you have to be pleased with how Walker's come along.
I think you have to be very, very pleased, both offensively and defensively. And I think it's a testament to how well Brant Brown is really working with these guys. And, he's taking the approach that every guy is different and he's molding them into what makes sense for their type of game. And it really shows.
Yeah, and I think the other 2 guys that have really been positives for the first, 2 weeks or so of this season are Brendan Donovan, even though you and I both wonder about him being in the 3rd spot in that lineup on a long-term basis. But the way he's hit has been very impressive, and Victor Scott the second. But obviously, another guy, you talk about, how much Jordan Walker's improved from a year ago. It looks like night and day, the difference between Victor Scott from a year ago and how he's played to this point in the season.
It really does, right? And I know you and I have been on the Victor Scott train for a long time, but I think when you're watching him out there, I maybe somebody could see this, maybe there's a metric that can tell me this, but I don't see Michael Ciani as a better defensive outfielder than Victor right now. That Victor's made some plays because of his speed that he's able to get to that I'm not sure any other outfielders do, right? And I'm glad that they've stuck with him in center instead of trying to move Newt out there just for the simple fact that I think Victor is faster and can get to better balls than Newt can. But offensively, we haven't had speed like that in a long time. And, 5 stolen bases so far that he has, and it really changes the game when he can get out there and run.
Cardinals will probably have to make a roster move. It might be this weekend. It might be the first of the week with Nolan Gorman hopefully being able to come back off the injured list. Obviously, Thomas Ajaysi came up when he was hurt, but I think you could make a case that this club would be better off keeping Sajasi as your extra infielder to float around and then optioning Ciani back to Memphis. So we'll see, because I don't think the way Walker's played, the way Scott's played, I don't know that you necessarily need a strictly defensive replacement in the outfield there, because Ciani just can't hit.
And what I don't understand is, Ollie made the defensive adjustment one of the games in Boston and put Ciani out there, and then he kind of looked lost on the one ball because he didn't know how to play the outfield. So it doesn't really help you as a defensive replacement if he doesn't know that particular outfielder where to go when you're on the road. At home, I guess it makes sense because it's much more of a pitcher's ballpark and makes sense, but in Boston, they got a weird center field, and so it's hard to play. And Ciani just didn't didn't look like he knew where to be.
It's one of those places you have to have experience out there to know how to play it, because all the angles are weird. The height of the wall is weird. How the ball is going to bounce off the wall is weird. So, left field as well, but, with the scoreboard out there, but the center field in Boston is a unique place to play.
And as we talk through the guys that are playing well, as you mentioned, Brendan Donovan, I think the guy that's helping Brendan Donovan play well is Nolan Arenado. And Nolan has got off to a good start, a little slow at the beginning, but he's gotten much better now. And I think that's what's allowing Donovan to play well, because you finally have someone behind him that they don't necessarily want to walk Donovan to get to Arenado. Whereas last year, you might have taken that chance because he wasn't playing very well. So I think the play of Arenado is helping the rest of this lineup too.
He off to a hot start in those 6 home games. I think he didn't play as well probably on the road trip as maybe you would have liked to, but it still seemed like he came up with a few hits here and there that drove in a run, and at least is more of a threat now and more of a presence in the middle of that lineup than he was a year ago.
He absolutely is, right? And I think the thing that I like in watching the approach that Brant Brown is working with these guys on is everything doesn't have to be a home run. And what tells me that Nolan is playing well is when he's hitting the ball to the opposite field. And Jordan Walker's doing the same thing. You're taking what the pitcher's giving you and taking the base hit instead of taking the old hitting coaches and Jeff Albert and Turner Ward. They wanted to try to take, wait for your pitch and hit a home run. Instead, this approach to me looks like I'm going to take what the pitcher's giving me and take the hit or take the walk. And next thing you know, you're scoring 4 and 5 runs a game.
Do want to take a moment to congratulate Martin Hill for winning our NCAA basketball contest. He had the Florida Gators winning the national championship, so he'll be going off to spend an enjoyable 2-night stay at any Drury hotel of his choice as his prize for winning that championship. And then Betsy Hilliard, a longtime reader here of STL Sports Page, was able to finish second, so she'll be going to a Cardinal game later on this summer, courtesy of STL Sports Page. So thanks to all of you who entered and played. We won't talk about my bracket or where I finished in the standings. Let's put it this way: I gave everybody else a lot of opportunities to win because of the fact that I was very far down in the pool.
And it happens like that. It's always a tough tournament, right?
It seems like it always happens to my bracket pool. That's and I didn't even have Kansas going more than one win, so it wasn't the problem this year. So, all right, we got to flip ahead and look ahead. Cardinals on Friday night, as we mentioned, start a homestand, 3 games against the Phillies. By the way, if you are going to any of the ball games or want to know what kind of the featured events are, we post the homestand highlights at the start of every homestand on the website under the Cardinals schedule page, and you can get all the details about what the first pitch ceremonies and the events going on. In addition to the ballgame probable pitching matchups, all that kind of stuff available as part of the homestand highlights every week, every homestand here on the website.
It's going to be an exciting homestand for sure. All kinds of giveaways. The Phillies are coming in, and like we've said before, this is a fun team to watch. So you're going to have fun at the game.
Palante gets a start on Friday night. Surprisingly, you asked me before we went on the air, and I didn't know the answer to this. He leads the Cardinals staff in the ERA.
It is surprising because he gives up so many hits. He also has an 89% left on base percentage and a 78% ground ball percentage. So to me, those are the numbers that are going to jump out at some point, because when you pitch to contact, guys are going to get on base because they're going to find hits, right? To me, he's a perfect example of like another guy like Seth Maness. If you look back at him, and as my worry about a pitch with contact type player is eventually those balls are going to find holes, right? And next thing you know, 3 hits and you're down. And that's what we're hoping to do offensively. So we need to really limit the base runners defensively from the pitching side.
So Palante Friday night, as we mentioned, Michaelis gets the start on Saturday. Matthew Libator will be the starter on Sunday in the final game against the Phillies. Then the Houston Astros come to town for 3 games. The other thing that is happening now with the start of the game on Friday night, Cardinals are beginning a stretch of 13 consecutive games without a day off. It seems at least a day off a week or maybe a couple of days off. Of course, I know a couple of games have been rained out as well, or long rain delays, but this is now a start of 13 consecutive games. So another good test for the offense, good test for the pitching staff after the 3 games in home against Houston. Then they go on the road, a 4-game series against the Mets in New York, 3 games in Atlanta against the Braves. And the Braves, even though they're off to a poor start, we know they're up. So the road ahead, very, very challenging for the Cardinals, I think.
And I think what you're saying there leads to another reason of why I think, and I agree with you, that Gorman should be added with Siani sent down, because you can get guys days off, right? Because Arenado can take a day off. The only question mark is probably Mason, because you can put Donovan there. but that's probably not your best defensive option. Fermin is probably better, but then you got to make another move if he comes up. So, but I think, you can get Burleson and Donovan both innings in the outfield as well. And so having Gorman there gives you more options, I think, than Siani does.
Well, we're now with a hamstring strain, as we expect him to come off the injury at some point in the next couple of days. I think he's eligible at some point this weekend. So it'll be interesting. Of course, we'll have all the Cardinal coverage from Busch Stadium, as well as then when we go back on the road. We appreciate everybody who are paying attention to our podcast. And you can get it almost anywhere you can find any of your podcasts, Mike, right?
Yeah, we tried to make this really easy for everyone to get it this year, and so we're everywhere that your podcasts are, right? So if you like going to YouTube, if you go in and subscribe on YouTube, you can get a notification every time we post our next video. Same thing with Spotify. Go into Spotify, search Reigns on the Cardinals, and then you can actually like that page there, and every time we post something, you can get a notification. So you can do that on Amazon or any of them. You can even tell your Alexa to play Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. So we really try to make it easy for everybody.
And of course, we also have a free newsletter. It comes out usually once a week. The new one will be coming out on Friday as well, which has all the links to all of our stories throughout the week, all the podcasts as well, all the other content and features here on the website, as well as, of course, any kind of contest that we're going. So I encourage you to sign up for the newsletter. You'll see that tab on the website if you're not already a subscriber to the weekly newsletter. So, all right, it'll be an interesting week at the ballpark. Mike, thanks. We'll talk to you soon.
I'm really looking forward to seeing how this weekend through the rotation goes through for both Palante, Michaelis, and even Libby too.
That's Mike Raines, Rob Raines here with a new edition of Raines on the Cardinals podcast on stlsportspage.com. Have a great day, everybody.